Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to Accenti Magazine's January Stories with authors Liana Cusmano, Christopher DiRaddo, Euphemia Fantati, Darlene Madott, and Maria Piaspadafora. I would kindly ask that you remain muted. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube and shared on social media. My name is Licia Canton, founding editor-in-chief of Accenti Magazine, and I am pleased to be your host today. We are all in different cities at this time. Let me mention that Darlene and Euphemia are in Toronto, Liana and Chris are in Montreal, Maria Pia is in Milano, Italy. I would like to acknowledge that I am located on unceded indigenous lands. Jojage, Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. We acknowledge them and other First Nations who care for the land across our country, and we recognize them as Canada's first storytellers. Feel free to type in questions using the chat function on your screen at any time. Please send your questions to the host. I will read questions during the very short Q&A period at the end. Also, if you have any other technical difficulties, please let me know. To watch the authors as they read or perform, choose speaker view at the top right corner. And again, please remain muted during the event. And also, we will ask you to stop your video just before I announce the first reader. That will help us with the quality of our recording. It is now my pleasure to introduce our 5 readers in alphabetical order. Liana Cusmano, who uses they, them pronouns. Can I remind you to mute, please? Maria Pia, can you see if anyone is muted, unmuted? Thank you. Liana Cusmano, who uses they, them pronouns, is a writer, filmmaker, spoken word artist, and arts educator. Liana is the 2018 and 2019 Montreal Slam champion and runner-up in the 2019 Canadian Individual Poetry Slam Championship. Catch and Release is the title of Liana's first novel, and it is forthcoming with Guernica Editions. Liana is editor-at-large at Accenti Magazine. Christopher DiRaddo is the author of 2 novels, The Geography of Pluto, 2014, and The Family Way, which is forthcoming in 2021. He is the founder and host of the Violet Hour reading series and the current president of the Quebec Writers Federation. He is also a contributor to the forthcoming Anthology of Queer Italian-Canadian Writing, co-sponsored by Accenti Magazine. Euphemia Fantatti's debut collection, A Recipe for Disaster and Other Unlikely Tales of Love, 2013, was runner-up for the Danuta Gleed Literary Award and winner of the F.G. Bressani Prize. Euphemia is a 3-time winner of Accenti's writing contest. Her memoir, My Father, Fortune Tellers and Me, was published in 2019. Darlene Madott is an award-winning writer and retired lawyer. Her short fiction has garnered numerous literary awards, including 2 Bressani Literary Prizes, the Paolucci Prize of the Italian-American Writers Association, the Accenti Magazine Award. Her forthcoming Dying Times, that is to be published shortly in 2021, is a fictional exploration of last journeys. Maria Piaspadafora is a freelance translator, creative writer, and a contributor to Accenti Magazine. She recently translated from Spanish to Italian the story of the short film El Árbol de las Almas Perdidas by Laura Zamora, nominated for the Premio Goya in 2020. And she is currently working on a translation of a work by Darlene Madott. Welcome to all of our authors. Thank you for being here today. Darlene Madott is our first reader, and right after her reading, Maria Piaspadafora will read the Italian translation of Darlene's writing.
Thank you,
So
Licia.
welcome, Darlene.
Thank you. After my presentation in December of selected excerpts from Dying Times, a friend emailed me to say, "I cannot wait to get your book in my hands. I love this story about laundry, but I'm also excited to read the darker parts of your book." So here goes a couple of existential excerpts from Dying Times. Whatever has a beginning must have an end. About the Big Bang Theory, it wasn't known about back when I was born. In Sunday school, we were told that God is infinite and that infinity means no beginning and no end. At the age of 5, trying to contemplate what no beginning was had brought on night terrors. I could somehow cope with the idea of no end, but that something could have no beginning? What about me, my mother and father? What did my beginning mean if we have no beginning? During the night terrors, I'd sleep run, not sleepwalk, around our apartment above my father's sign shop until Dad would catch me up in his arms and make me drink a glass of water. This was the dream that had me running barefoot in my seersucker pajamas. I'm in some kind of very constricted, snake-like tunnel, crawling slowly towards its end, toward the light. And just as I get there, someone plugs up that end of the tunnel, and I'm trapped in darkness forever. I am told that, in fact, the umbilical cord had been roped around my neck at birth. It was a miracle I survived. I have been told that I am one of the lucky ones, delivered from my own darkness, alive. Empty fields. One sunny Sunday in late August, just before I started kindergarten, my father took me with him to a clothing factory outlet. He had to mount a sign for Elliot Atkinson in an adjacent open field. Dad dug post holes and I held the post while Dad filled the holes. I remember the sound of wind, the rolling crunch of a single car passing on the dirt road. We were alone. I played in the empty field, chasing clicking grasshoppers through the tall, dry weeds that scratched my bare legs. The cricket chirps were accompanied by the high sawing of the praying mantis. It was like the high sound in my middle ear, that is the sound of my own blood circulating. From that video, I could hear my father's hammer banging nails into the sign he had hand-painted back at his shop, United Signs and Outdoor Advertising. And then I was back in that tunnel of my night terror. Only this was day, and this horrible feeling began to close around me. It was a growing feeling that came up from my stomach and pushed the air out of the air, as if there was no forward or backward through it. Why am I here? In the blinding light of summer's day, I stood alone in the empty field, unable to move, paralyzed by the terrible fear. I didn't even hear my father calling me once his job was done. It was as if the insect sounds and every other noise had been sucked from the field, and I was deaf and lost in a thick silence. What happened? My father asked. I remember staring at his eyes in bewilderment, staring at the question before burying my face in his chest. Father, why would you have given me all of this, if only to take it all away? Silence. Father, can you hear me? Silence. Am I all that I am supposed to be? Silence. Did I make enough of your gifts? Silence. Is there such a thing as an empty field?
Tutto ciò che ha un inizio deve avere una fine. Della teoria del Big Bang non si sapeva nulla quando nacqui. Al catechismo ci dicevano che Dio è infinito e che infinito significa nessun inizio e nessuna fine. All'età di 5 anni, cercare di contemplare cosa fosse il nessun inizio mi aveva causato terrori notturni. In qualche modo riusciva a sopportare l'idea della non esistenza di una fine, ma che qualcosa potesse non avere un inizio e io, mia madre e mio padre? Cosa significava il mio inizio se non avevamo un inizio? Durante i terrori notturni non camminavo, ma correvo nel sonno, intorno al nostro appartamento, sopra il negozio di insegne artistiche e pubblicitarie di mio padre, finché lui non mi afferrava, mi prendeva in braccio e mi faceva bere un bicchiere d'acqua. Questo è il sogno che mi faceva correre a pieni nudi nel mio pigiamino. Mi trovo in una specie di tunnel molto stretto, come un serpente che striscia lentamente verso la fine, verso la luce. Proprio quando arrivo lì, qualcuno chiude quell'estremità del tunnel e io rimango intrappolata nell'oscurità per sempre. Mi hanno raccontato che in realtà sono nata con il cordone ombelicale intorno al collo. È un miracolo che sia sopravvissuta. Mi è stato detto che sono stata uno dei fortunati, venuta alla luce dalla mia stessa oscurità. Campi deserti. Una soleggiata domenica di fine agosto, poco prima che iniziasse la scuola materna, mio padre mi portò con sé all'outlet di una fabbrica di abbigliamento. Doveva montare un'insegna per Elliot Atkinson in un campo aperto vicino. Papà scavava i postol, io tenevo il palo, mentre lui riempiva le buche. Ricordo il sibilo del vento, lo scricciolio di una sola macchina che passava sulla strada sterrata. Eravamo soli. Io giocavo nel campo deserto. Inseguivo le cavallette che zillavano attraverso le braccia alte e secche che mi graffiavano le gambe nude. Il frinire dei grilli era accompagnato dal fruscio delle ali vibranti di una mantide religiosa. Era simile al suono acuto del sangue che circola nell'orecchio medio. Da quel campo potevo sentire il martello di mio padre che batteva i chiodi dell'insegna che aveva dipinta a mano nel suo negozio, United Sign and Outdoor Advertising. E poi mi trovavo di nuovo in quel tunnel del terrore notturno, solo che era giorno e questa orribile sensazione cominciò a inghiottirmi. Era una sensazione crescente che mi saliva dallo stomaco e spingeva l'aria fuori dall'aria, come se non ci fosse via d'uscita. Perché mi trovo qui? Nella luce accecante di una giornata d'estate ero da sola in quel campo deserto, incapace di muovermi, paralizzata da una terribile paura. Non sentii nemmeno mio padre che mi chiamava dopo aver finito il suo lavoro. Era come se i suoni degli insetti e ogni altro rumore fossero stati risucchiati dal campo e io ero sorda, smarrita, in un silenzio fitto. Che cosa è successo? Mi chiese mio padre. Ricordo che lo fissai negli occhi, disorientata, battendo le palpebre, riprese per dirgli il volto nel petto. Padre, perché avresti deciso di darmi tutto questo per poi portarmelo via? Silenzio. Mi senti? Silenzio. Sono tutto ciò che dovrei essere? Silenzio. Ho fatto abbastanza uso dei tuoi doni? Silenzio. Esiste qualcosa di simile a un campo deserto? Grazie.
Thank you, Maria Pia. And our next reader is Liana Cusmano.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and be featured among all these fantastic writers. And I want to thank Accenti for organizing this event. The two poems that I'm going to be reading for all of you actually refer to moving and driving and walking around at night in the dark, usually after 8 p.m., which interestingly enough is something that we're not allowed to do here in Montreal anymore because of the curfew. So this first piece is called Snails. Some facts about the terrestrial pulmonate gastropod mollusk, also known as the snail. Snails can travel at the incredible speed of 45 meters per hour. They like to dine in groups. They only have one lung each. They take cover from the scorching heat of the sun for their safety. They come out in the petrichor, that earthy smell after rain, and they breathe in the oxygen of that scent through their skin. Snails can live up to 25 years. They are all hermaphrodites. I'm not thinking about Snails when I meet her in a bar on Bishop Street, small and dark and full of poems. She asks me to tell her about myself. I tell her that I am small and dark and full of poems. We rush and stumble through our first season together at the panicked, languid speed of 45 meters per hour. She accepts that sometimes my chest is full of screaming nails, that sometimes my thoughts are a twisted sponge. I learn that her mind is the unreliable keeper of her troubled consciousness, that her heart is the frantic synthesizer of her soul. We dine in groups, in exuberant parties of two. Afterwards, she strokes my chest even when it's full of screaming nails. She strokes my chest even when it's bound like a book I never expected anyone to read. We put our fingertips in one another's hair, on one another's spines. We breathe as though we shared a single lung. We never leave one another out in the harsh sunlight. That would be like giving away a secret someone confided in you, something sacred you could promise them you would keep. Each of us has heard too many horror stories, too many sad poems. Each of us has been looked at one too many times as if they were something someone found on the sole of their shoe. Our silhouettes are holding hands in the petrichor on the night we hear a cracking beneath our feet. We crouch down in the dark and see dozens of snails. Snails that have come out onto the sidewalk to breathe after the rain. Snails that meet their untimely demise as their shells are crushed beneath the sole of someone's shoe. You only notice that they're there after you've already stepped on one. What is the word for the sound of your own destruction announcing your presence? What does it mean for your existence to be noticed only during your annihilation, for the two to be so tightly intertwined? How many times have we announced our presence and immediately had it challenged in schools, targeted in public bathrooms, destroyed at family dinners? We gather every last snail and hide them in the grass before we uncoil ourselves from the sidewalk. Later, we crawl into bed and press ourselves tightly against one another, as though to breathe through one another's skin, as though maybe by being so tightly intertwined, we can drown out the sound of safe spaces being split asunder beneath our feet. We hope to live at least as long as a snail does. Too often, a snail only says, "I am here," as it dies. In announcing its very existence, it sounds its own death toll. The two are one and the same. How many of us are snails on the sidewalk in the dark? This next poem is very, very recent. It doesn't have a title at the moment. When I was younger, I thought that when a driver looked out the back windshield to drive in reverse, they put their hand to the headrest of the passenger seat to protect the person sitting next to them in case there was an accident while moving backwards. It seemed more likely that there would be an accident while moving backwards. Sometimes moving backwards can be an accident. Sometimes memory is a blow to the back of the head that you inflict on yourself, like when you reopen wounds by mistake, gashes that have been gaping and clamping like broken Venus flytraps for many years now, wounds that are sewn up and torn apart, sewn up and torn apart, sewn up and torn apart. When I drive all over the city in any direction at any given time of the day or night, I try to pretend that I don't know that I'm looking for us, moving backwards by driving forwards past all the street corners and bookstores and coffee shops, hoping to run into the ghosts of two people trading stolen kisses on borrowed time. When we were curled up on your sofa while your plant sat on the windowsill and watched us cry, did it really matter where we'd come from or how we'd gotten there? The plants remember all the terrors and painful nothings, all the secrets that were eating us alive from the inside out. The plants remember the first I love yous, halting and earnest and raw. They remember the last I love yous, the ones that by then were almost casual. So anchored, so true, they didn't need any extra weight to be grounded in a way that neither of us would doubt. I love yous that were offered as fact, self-evident, like a simple hello or goodbye. I love yous that were effortless and unadorned. The plant saw how it would strike us every time, all over again, how sacred it is to love and be loved with nothing but bodies that are both broken and beautiful, how sometimes even the oldest cliches can feel like the highest truth. With our mangled skin, our tired bones, during that brutal, hellish summer that finished us, our hearts continued to murmur against one another, I have you, I have you, I have you. Why did we apologize for the high notes tumbling out of our mouths, for the way we held one another's names between our teeth? I still remember my lips against your brow bone, your left eye socket, you're right here next to me. I still know that your scent is a shade of bronze that I will never see again. When I was younger, I never asked myself why a driver put their hand to the headrest of the passenger seat, even when there was no one sitting there, no one to protect in case there was an accident while moving backwards. I never questioned it. I guess I assumed that it was an instinct, or maybe a gesture that you practiced so that you wouldn't forget, so that the next time someone was in the passenger seat, you would know how to protect them. You would remember.
Thank you, Liana. So Euphemia is our next reader, Euphemia Fantati.
Thank you, Licia, for organizing this, and Accenti magazine and the ICW for the support of this event. I'm so pleased to be here with these other fabulous writers I admire. I'm going to read a piece that is a work of flash nonfiction. It's called 7 Improvised Stages in DIY Curative Stregoria. 1. Study the old religion of Italy. Make a mental shopping list of items you will not be able to find at the East End Food Co-op. Rue, hyssop, a black obsidian scrying mirror. Far from the land of your heritage, modify your plans. Add a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar to your English breakfast tea. Sip the concoction slowly and in silence to avoid scalding your tongue or burning another with your speech. Light a lavender candle and set the intention to heal. Your beloved offers an ultimatum, his way or the highway. By the time of the next full moon, you will have moved out. This bewitchment is about self-restoration. 2. Decide to bury journal pages filled with rants about every relationship failure you've endured in a community garden. Nowhere near the vegetables. No one needs to eat zucchinis marinated in guilt. Search the aisles of home hardware for a trowel. Admit you're not up to the task of joining Woodland Park's waiting list. Remember that doomed lucky bamboo? How it suffered. That wasn't bad feng shui. that was you. Return to your new, sparsely furnished apartment empty-handed. Burn the photocopied diary entries in the kitchen sink. Symbolism and fire safety. Watch the paper blacken and curl. Be careful. Don't inhale any smoke. Ashes float through the air, charred bits of several ill-fated bonds being released. When the alarm sounds, turn on the faucet full blast to extinguish the flames. Throw burnt, soggy mess into the recycle bin. Drink a shot of Amaro to honor the maternal ancestors who believed life was bitter gruel. Gag, gargle with salt water. 3. Place a Band-Aid on the skin over your cracked heart. Use one from the Spider-Man pack purchased for levity's sake. Imagine a web being spun like gauze over that busted muscle. Dressing the wound will help you function during the day as you answer phones, give credit card balances, and deflect customer rage. As an homage to your paternal line, get hammered on a bottle of cheap red. Pound the table, declare wine, sangue de vita, and truth serum that should always be stocked in the kitchen. In the morning, recognize you have no stamina for bacchanalia. 4. Sprinkle bergamot oil on a square of cotton and stuff the cloth into your pillowcase. Let this scent soothe your frazzled soul. Allow nature's healer to attract mirth and repel mosquitoes. This fragrance brings several nights of good sleep. Discard the Ambien, flush those tiny blue pills. Think of Atlantic cod falling into a dreamless trance in the ocean. Don't worry, your fish cousins won't drown. You, the gillless, landlocked descendant of a creature who crawled from the swirling primordial soup of existence, you want to stop gasping for air. 5. Muster the energy to have a shower. The detritus of your former limited self. Wash your hair for the first time in 9 days. Massage those loose locks as if they were golden fairy tale tresses. Break the spell. Consider Cinderella's mane of color, broomstick bristles. Flick water away with the gesture a fortune teller once demonstrated. 6. Don't hang garlic in the window. Mince for spaghetti aglio e olio. While the noodles are cooking, tape a Ziploc sandwich bag of salt to the inside of the front door. This should discourage any lethargic Lothario from finding his way to your home. Write an incantation, an inventory of forgotten dreams. Put the list in a silk pouch. 7. Consult a Vedic astrologer. Turns out you've been working with intense karma since you left home. 18 years spent under a Saturn Dasha with only 1 year left to go. How goody. This taskmaster planet is a destiny maker, the supreme purifier driving you through a rigorous obstacle course meant to crystallize your resolve. Throw away the amethyst engagement ring. Carry a Nazar bead for protection. Visit a soothsayer to have the curse removed. Hard to say whether the jinx was inherited or you're a calamity. The tarot spread suggests facing this unfamiliar terrain with tenacity. Explore inner worlds. Examine this outer space truth. We are all heavenly bodies here, made of stardust and sinew, cosmic debris and dandruff, orbiting each other's pain, navigating our trajectory through murky territory and taxing times. You must conjure calm, summon serenity. Here is the advice you are given. Get up every morning and greet the dawn with gratitude. Fill the silence with quiet, endless thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Euphemia Fantati. And now, DiRaddo.
Hi everyone. Thank you to Licia. I really do appreciate being part of today's reading, and thank you for supporting my work. Thank you also to the readers I've been reading with. Loving hearing your work. I'm going to read, as Licia said, an excerpt from the Queer Canadian anthology. It's just an excerpt of a longer piece called Pictures and Parades, and it's a nonfiction piece about a series of pictures I've taken at gay pride celebrations over the years. There is a picture of me taken at my first gay pride parade that is one of my favorites. In it, I'm wearing a vintage red and white baseball t-shirt, ironically, of course, and a black sports cap. I must have been about 20 years old at the time, but I look years younger. I'm standing in the center of the photo, my skinny left hand grasping the straps of a tiny blue backpack, and my eyes are closed, having just blinked the moment the picture was taken. When I look back at the photo now, though, some 26 years later, I wonder if I was blinking. For all around me, there is color and commotion, balloons, bodies, faces, smiles. Perhaps it wasn't a blink. Perhaps, as I stood there in the center of all that raging chaos, I was blinded by brilliance, joyful, beautiful brilliance. I had arrived. I say that this was my first gay pride parade, but it wasn't. I had passed by on my own the previous year. I had read about the Diversité parade in the Montreal Mirror, seen the photocopied route at the cache of a bar I had darted into the week before. Almost on autopilot, I woke up that Sunday morning, got dressed, and then left the house, not admitting to myself where I was going. I rode the subway into town and then got off one stop before the departure point. Once outside, I walked towards the noise. I headed north along St. Denis Street and then west along Mount Royal to the escalating sounds of music, microphones, and motors. I had never seen these streets closed to traffic before, but here they were, a concrete carpet that had been rolled out and lay waiting for the city's gay community. I walked the route in reverse and came across more and more people as I did. People with props, wigs, costumes, friends, all heading in the same direction as me. Afraid to go too far, I stopped at one of the corners, emboldened by the men and women gathering together on the sidewalks, and waited with them to see what all the fuss was about. Little did I know how much was just about to change. I am no stranger to parades. I grew up on Montreal's St. Patrick's Day parade, the cold green pageant of the city's Irish and Irish for a day. Every year, my family would gather on the corner of St. Catherine and University with spiked coffee and apples and watch the marching bands and horses pass. There would be many photos taken here too, of friends and family, of strangers and shamrocks. Montreal is a city that loves its St. Patrick's Day, and that included my family. Even my father, a proud Italian man, would happily sport a green derby hat and a Kiss Me I'm Irish badge as he cheered from the sidewalk. Even though I'm half Irish, I didn't get it. I didn't understand a city or a person's love of all things Irish. I mean, how could I be proud of how I was born? And what about this parade and all of its cliches? The green, the gold, the leprechauns. It felt like being made to sit through church, like I was being forced to take part in the rituals and sacraments of a congregation that was not my own. However, this other parade spoke to me. So strange yet so familiar, it was as if I had come upon my likeness in a window and watched as that boy sat down to eat with another family. Everything was so loud, so tall, so large that I felt dwarfed by it all. How could I have lived in this city for 2 decades and not know that this was going on? And how great would it be to be one of those people, one of these people, one of the proud ones walking down the street before all of these onlookers? When the parade had finally passed me by, I followed it the rest of the way down. I wasn't bold enough to walk in the street with the rest of the contingent, so I walked alongside of it on the sidewalk. I followed the parade as it snaked down through town, down Mount Royal Street to St. Denis, down St. Denis to Charrier, and then along Charrier to Parc La Fontaine. At that point, the trucks broke off and everyone else kept walking. I followed them into the park, still very much a passerby, and watched as they arrived at their final destination, began to break off into groups to drink beer, eat hot dogs, listen to music, and dance. I looked at my watch. I was late. I was scheduled to meet up with friends at a pub downtown for our Sunday ritual, cheap chicken wings and deep bowls of sangria. But as I stood there, in the wake of what I had just witnessed, I found that I couldn't move. I stood immobile in the grass, in the center of this park that we had all ended up at, and watched as everybody celebrated. My watch felt heavy. I didn't want to leave, but I had no reason to stay. There was a photo of me that was taken a couple of years later. In it, I have blue hair. Jeannie, one of the people in charge of parade security, had helped me dye it the week before. I am sitting outside in the grass, and my head is resting on the shoulder of my best friend, Eric. Around my neck is a laminated pass that tells people who I am. My name is Christopher, and I am now the publicist for Diversité. Thinking about this now, it does seem remarkable how in just a few short years I went from wanting to be the proud person on the float to the man whose job it is to throw the party. I still look young in the photo. I'm 23, I'm out, and I'm proud. I tell people that every day during the 5-day celebrations. It's my voice on the radio, my face on the TV, my name in the paper, and somehow now that doesn't frighten me. I got the job through my university professor, who had been asked by organizers to recommend a student in her class who might be looking for a summer job. Immediately, I said yes. How great would it be to be a part of something so life-changing, so transformative? For the parade had changed my life. That day, years back, after I had finally dragged myself from the park, I went down to meet my friends at that bar. Is everything all right? They asked as I stared into my cocktail. I'm fine, I said, usually the talkative one. I'm just tired. Rather, I was distracted. It would have seemed impossible to me the day before, but by the end of this night, I will have told everyone at this table that I'm gay. They will be surprised, but they will thankfully support me. Eric will come with me to the parade the following year. He will also take the photo of me with my eyes closed. I will tell my parents too, eventually, before I get this job, and I will save them the trouble of having to tell all of their friends and the rest of the family by doing it myself in the pages of the Montreal Gazette. Of course, you don't have to be gay to come to the parade, I'll say in interviews. Not everyone who goes to the St. Patrick's Day parade is Irish, are they? Everyone is welcome to the party. I loved my job, the happy faces, the scorching sun, the exhaustion. I remember the year that we first choked St. Catherine Street with our numbers, how we weren't sure how many people would show and how we ended up filling the street with thousands. And I remember the year that I came across the AIDS vigil as I walked home towards the end of the night, how the people had moved the shimmering candles from the park to the middle of the street and sat by them, staring into them, looking for their friends and former lovers in the light. There are no pictures of these memories, but the images are burned into my brain. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher DiRaddo. Our next reader and final reader is Maria Piaspadafora, who will be reading her writing in Italian. Welcome, Maria Pia.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Accenti magazine and their editors for giving me this opportunity, and Darlene Madott for letting me get into their work again. And thank you, family and friends who are here for me. For the Accenti magazine January story, I'm going to read in Italian an excerpt of a fictional piece, which is part of a bigger project and another very different piece. The first excerpt is a story that came from a dream that I had, and it is about motherhood, miscarrying, and the connection of nature and life. The last piece instead is the result of a writing session and discussion with a friend and an artist of mine, during which we discussed about the coined term used by Elena Ferrante through her writings, that is smarginatura, within mythological women figures. I hope you enjoyed both pieces. Il salice piangente. Ogni giorno, al tramonto, una donna si sedeva sotto quel salice. Posava le mani su quel tronco robusto, proprio vicino ad una fessura circolare, che sembrava essere stata scolpita da un artista. Non si azzardava mai ad infilarci la mano. Lo aveva fatto solamente una volta, celando per sempre il suo dolore sul foglio. Non lo perdeva mai d'occhio, lo osservava persino dalla finestra della cucina, mentre lavava la frutta fresca del giardino. Era come se solo guardandolo lo proteggesse e come se da quelle grosse radici ciò che aveva seppellito potesse, attraverso l'albero, prendere nuova vita. I giorni passavano, così come i mesi e poi gli anni. Quelle mani ormai ruvide tornavano sotto quell'albero, tastavano il tronco e quella fessura. Il salice restava sempre lì, a crescere erano solo le sue foglie, che ogni anno, quasi a voler ricongiungersi con le radici che le avevano generate, si avvicinavano alla terra. La donna, nonostante il bastone, continuava a fare visita all'albero ad ogni crepuscolo, accarezzando la sua ruvida corteccia. Non riusciva più a sedersi ai suoi piedi, ma entrava nel labirinto naturale delle sue foglie. Arrivava al tronco e si piegava fino a quella fessura e vi poggiava le mani. Un giorno una piccola foglia del salice toccò la terra. La donna era davanti a quella finestra della cucina quando sentì un tuffo nel cuore. Guardò l'albero che negli anni era divenuto sempre più sfocato e riuscì a percepire il tocco della foglia con la terra. Sorrise e chiuse gli occhi per sempre. Smarginature. Il chicco rosso del frutto che ingeriamo resta fermo in gola senza possibilità di discesa. Quello stesso chicco che nella bocca di Persefone si tramuta in liberazione mascherata. Inconsapevoli della trama ordita dal figlio di Crono, come l'ingenua core sbocciamo nuovamente dalla terra. Fioriamo, prosperiamo per danzare nell'etereo. Ci accoglie una Demetra smarginata che a poco ricrea i suoi contorni, mentre noi sbiadiamo sotto il suo potere. E giunge il tempo in cui siamo costretti a fare ritorno nel regno di Ade, a tornare nella gabbia costruita con le nostre stesse mani, per il solo gusto di strappare un narciso dalla terra. Grazie.
Grazie, Maria Pia. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our authors. Thanks, Darlene. Thanks, Euphemia. Thanks, Christopher and Liana. If there are any questions, we can take a few minutes for a very few questions.
Oh, there is a question.
There is a question. Okay.
Question for the authors. Who do you want your writing to reach?
Okay, that's from Rosanna. Thank you, Rosanna. So how about we go around and Darlene, do you want to start? The question is, who are you trying to reach with your writing?
I'm always grateful for even one sensitive, intelligent, thoughtful reader. And I'm always surprised when I find that reader or that reader finds me. So I don't start off any creative work with an expected audience or a targeted audience. I leave it entirely to chance. I'm trying to write with my stars out. I'm trying to write what I urgently need to say, or what I have to work through. I think all my writing comes down to a contemplation. No specific audience, in other words. Over to you, Euphemia.
Euphemia?
I guess I can't just say ditto what Darlene said because she summed it up so beautifully. But I do want to echo some of her thoughts. It's a great question. I mean, you know, everybody in the world, the New York Times bestseller critics, those people, but really, who am I trying to reach? I sometimes think Liana had this beautiful line in one of her poems about the memory, like the back that hits you like the back of the head. And I think sometimes I'm just trying to reach into the past and I'm writing to a version of younger me who wanted to hear these stories and couldn't find them. So, but thank you for the question, Rosanna. Fabulous.
Chris, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to echo, I guess, what Euphemia said exactly. Like, I'm writing the kind of stuff I think I would like to have read when I was younger. I think, you know, like a younger version of myself, and in that hopefully find an audience. You know, but I don't really think of it beyond that. I'd like everyone to read it. I think, you know, I think there's no particular person, but I feel like, you know, the voice that I have is definitely something I feel like, you know, I'm my ideal reader in a way.
Liana?
I think it might have been, I can't remember which writer it was who said it, but to write things that you needed to read when you were younger, I think is not so much an objective when you start out, for me personally, but it's always a nice surprise if you revisit a piece or even as you're reading it or you look over your work, that you've somehow managed to become the person that you needed when you were younger, or managed to produce something that you would have wanted to see a long time ago. And so that's really comforting and reassuring, I think. But beyond that, I think some writers definitely write for an audience. It's not something that I can say I do really intentionally, but if ever someone says that they could see themselves in a piece, or that they wish they had read this a long time ago, that's always really touching. And I think that that's what being a writer is about as well, to forge links in the community, and that all of us are creating work that we either all need right now or that we needed a while ago and that we're getting at a delay.
Thank you. Maria Pia,
Yes.
if you can answer in English and in Italian.
Yeah, I don't have any audience in mind when I write, because when I write for myself. So first of all, for myself, and then for the others who want to see something with my writings, and because the second piece was really a deep piece, and I used a lot of mythological elements and figure, and it is not for all, maybe, but you can understand, I think, what I'm telling without knowing that. So it's for everybody. Quindi in italiano sì, è una lettura per tutti, penso. Solo che quando scrivo cerco di riflettere, di scrivere sul foglio quello che proprio sento, indipendentemente da un lettore, un possibile lettore.
Grazie, Maria.
Grazie.
Thank you, all five of you, for your responses. And while we're waiting for another question, if there is another question coming, I'd like to promote the anthology that I mentioned that Chris is reading today is part of that anthology. It's the anthology of queer Italian-Canadian writing. I'm still looking for contributors. So if you know anyone out there who is Italian, a member of the LGBTQ plus community, a writer, this is an opportunity. It is the first such anthology. I think we've been waiting a long time for this anthology. And I'm sure it won't be only the first and the last. I mean, there will be so many others afterwards. All right. Do any of you, our authors featured here today, have any questions for one another? While I read the comments that people are writing to me directly. No, that's okay. Okay, so in that case, I will close. So I mentioned the anthology. I also want to mention the documentary, which is titled Creative Spaces, Queer and Italian Canadian, which is a series of interviews. Chris and Liana are in the documentary, and it is a documentary that is funded by the Association of Italian Canadian Writers, as well as the Queer Research Studies Group, of which Dominic Beneventi, past president of the AICW, is the head of this research group. And Creative Spaces, the documentary, will be premiered on March 3rd at 3 p.m. And that premiere is sponsored by Accenti magazine and the Frank Iacobucci Center for Italian Canadian Studies at the Italian department at University of Toronto. So if you're interested in that, just send me a message or write to accenti@accenti.ca or look at our Facebook page. So I also want to remind you that Accenti magazine has 3 contests. Prose, a writing contest, prose, a poetry contest. This is the first edition of our poetry contest, and a Capture an Italian Moment contest. If you're interested in those contests, the deadline is coming up early February, so you have a little bit less than a month. Go to accenti.ca for all the details. This
Just
event,
to jump in real quick, I think Jenna Patriarca has a question. It's for the writers. Is anyone worried about the word nostalgia? It seems often we who are writing about certain parts of our past or even recent past tend to be labeled with the word nostalgia. So writers, what comments do we have on nostalgia?
Does anyone want to speak to that question?
Never worried about the word nostalgia, and I never worry about labels. I just write.
Good.
Yeah, I don't think I'm very worried about nostalgia either. I enjoy spending time mining my own past for, you know, creative means. I feel like it's also me processing a lot of the stuff that, like, you know, that's happened to me in my life. And, you know, I don't really write future forward. It's weird. I think I do write a lot in the past, and it's interesting. I haven't really thought about it in that way, but I'm not so afraid of that.
I worry about nostalgia a lot, which doesn't really make all that much sense. But I think, Chris, you make a good point when we write about the past, and especially when we burrow so far into that past and so deeply and try to look for so many things that we might not have noticed before, and all of these other things resurface and come out. My concern is just that nostalgia, or that my writing be cliche or be contrived. That's always something I'm very, very carefully looking to avoid, because nostalgia can be such a trap. And I think as a writer, you need to strike that fine balance between like navel gazing and putting something out there that everybody can relate to, because all of us have a past and all of us look back on it.
Maria Pia?
Yes, I think that everybody who write put a little bit of nostalgia in his or her or them, their own writing. So yes, but it doesn't scare me, but helps to also to understand the present and the past. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
It does worry me very much. I worry about everything though, but I have had someone ask a similar question before. So I have to put it on a spectrum of worries and I kind of measure it, because there's so many things to worry about and I'm good at it. I've got lots of training from my family, but I think it's similar to what Chris and also Liana said. There's this worry about being cliched, and especially because I write a lot of nonfiction and memoir. The accusation is often that that's a navel gazing activity, and what I really need to do when I'm editing and writing is marry the personal to the universal. So what part of this story that is so based in descriptive details about what it was like to be in Italy as a child, what it was like to lose language but have a dialect, what it's like to be treated certain ways. That's something that other people can relate to, even if they can't relate to like walking down the street and smelling smoke and suddenly being like transported back to a village in Italy in 1974, which is something that happens to me when I smell wood burning fires. So yeah, I do think it's something that I think about in the editing process. I did have one thing I wanted to mention that I forgot to say. Maybe it can go in the comments, but I think Christopher and Darlene said they have books coming out this year. And I can't remember when that was. So if they can mention that either in the comments or tell us, then we can all like get those books when they come out.
You want to plug your books? I mentioned them in the bios, but please go ahead.
Sure. Dying Times is coming out with Exile editions in the fall of 2021. And I understand there's going to be a pre-purchase link available very shortly from Michael Callahan of Exile Editions. He's going to send me the link. So if people would put their emails in the chat, because some of the writers have friends that I don't have access to their emails or know who's friends and who belongs to which writer in terms of bringing them to this party. If you don't mind putting your email in the chat, Licia is kindly going to share the chat with us all. And I would love to follow up with people who have attended this. It's been a wonder, and I want to thank you as well, all the writers. It's been really an interesting Zoom. I've watched a lot of Zooms, and I say this with all honesty, I thoroughly enjoyed the readings and I thoroughly enjoyed participating in this. It was wonderful. Nice balance. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I do have a book coming out in April with Vehicle Press. It's called The Family Way. My main character is an Italian-Canadian man named Paul, who on the cusp of turning 40 is asked by two friends to help them start a family. So it's kind of about the process of being a sperm donor, but at the same time kind of examining what it, how queer people build family and make family. So that comes out, I don't have an official date yet, but April, and it looks like it'll be an online launch because I think we're still going to be doing this in April. So I'm sure they'll, if you're interested, feel free to reach out to Licia or Google my name online. You can kind of find more information about the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Darlene. We'll look for the dates of your book launches in 2021. And sadly, it'll be on Zoom. But we'll reach more people. More people can come on Zoom, right? Instead of limiting to Toronto or Montreal.
Yeah, I'm trying to be creative. I actually designed a whole bunch of coffee mugs.
Yes.
That are kind of like that my main character drinks out of a coffee mug. So I figured I'm going to make it. And so I've made it like a limited edition run of coffee mugs. I'm trying to come up with, fun things to do because, you can't really have a big party, right? At least not yet. So,
I used to give out a bottle of wine with the label of my book for anyone who bought 5 books. So people would often get involved in buying $5 books just so they could get this bottle of wine with the book label on the front. But I can't do that anymore. But I think it's interesting that there are people who are advanced selling their books now, and it helps the small publisher as well as it helps the author. So that here we are in this Zoom era, and if we could get our acts together to get a pre-sale link, it would be really helpful. I'm trying to do that, but it's going to require all the creativity we have, and I don't think this is going to be a short-term pandemic. I think we got at least another year.
Yes, I agree, Darlene, sadly. Well, you'll be happy to know that people are putting their email addresses in the chat. So yeah, so I will share those with you later. So what we're going to do now is I will close, and then as we're saying goodbye, everyone can, if they haven't already done so, can turn their video on and say goodbye, and then we'll wait for everyone to leave, and then we'll have a post-event chat. Is that okay with everybody?
Perfect.
Yes, okay, great. So this event on Zoom was made possible by Accenti magazine, with special thanks to the Association of Italian Canadian Writers for lending us their Zoom. We acknowledge that readings by Liana Cusmano and Darlene Madott are supported by the Canada Council for the Arts and the Writers Union of Canada. And I'd also like to thank Maria Piaspadafora for technical assistance, since my usual partner was unavailable. Thank you very much, Maria Pia. Thank you, all of you, authors, listeners, supporters, for being here today. If you have any questions, any comments, write to accenti@accenti.ca or visit our site at accenti.ca. I hope you have a wonderful January, and it'll be February soon, and we look forward to seeing you on February 14th. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.